Captain Christopher Sinclair stood on the observation deck of the Starfire Vanguard, his calloused hands gripping the railing as he watched the nebula swirl outside. At 52, his face bore the lines of a man who had seen too many battles, but his eyes still held the fire of a younger man. He had spent the last 20 years patrolling the Helios expanse, a remote region on the fringes of human-controlled space. His command had been quiet, too quiet, for far too long. That changed when the distress signal came through. The signal wasn't in any language the ship's AI could immediately translate, but the urgency in its tone was unmistakable. It repeated every 30 seconds. Help. Helios Prime. Iron Maw. Children. Please. Atlas, Sinclair said, turning to the blue holographic form that materialized beside him. Where's this coming from? Helios Prime, sir, the AI replied, its voice calm but urgent. A gas mining colony belonging to the Krellos species. Population approximately 5,400. The Iron Maw fleet, 24 vessels, has entered their system. They're broadcasting threats on all channels. Sinclair clenched his jaw. He knew the Iron Maw. They were worse than pirates. They were butchers. They didn't just steal resources. They harvested living beings, stripping entire colonies of their inhabitants and leaving behind only hollow shells of what once was. He had seen the aftermath of their work before, and it haunted him. Plot an intercept course, he ordered. Maximum speed. Sir, Lieutenant Miranda Cole said from her station, her voice hesitant. The Galactic Accord explicitly forbids us from entering Krellos space. We'd be violating. I don't care about the Accord, Sinclair cut in. We're responding to a distress call. That's all that matters. Cole nodded, her expression firming. Aye, sir. The Starfire Vanguard surged forward, its fusion engines burning bright as it leapt into hyperspace. Behind it, 11 other human warships followed, their crews preparing for what they all knew could be the hardest fight of their lives. On Helios Prime, the Krellos colony hung like a fragile jewel in the swirling atmosphere of the gas giant. The Krellos were a race of gas-based lifeforms, their bodies composed of swirling vapors contained within translucent membranes. They communicated through shifting colors and harmonic frequencies, their voices like wind chimes carried on a breeze. They had never known war. Their entire civilization was built around harmony and balance. Within the central spire of the colony, Elder Liren watched as the Iron Maw fleet descended through the upper atmosphere. Her vapor body pulsed with fear, shifting from calm blue to deep violet. Beside her stood her apprentice, young Jorvan, whose form flickered with anxiety. Elder, Jorvan said, his voice trembling like a breeze through threads. They're broadcasting again. Liren nodded, her form darkening further. Play it. The message came through, a harsh, metallic voice that grated against the Krellos' delicate senses. Attention, Krellos. You have 1 hour to surrender your ammonia harvest and open your data course. Resistance will be met with termination. We have already harvested 3 colonies like yours. Do not make us repeat ourselves. Jorvan shuddered. They don't understand us, do they? We don't have data cores like other species. Our knowledge is stored in harmonic resonance across the entire colony. Liren's form glowed with sorrow. They don't care, child. They see only resources to be taken. She turned to the main console, her vapor tendrils moving over the controls. We must contact the humans. Jorvan's form flickered in shock. But Elder, the Accord. The Accord means nothing if we are dead, Liren interrupted. The humans are our only hope. She input the emergency frequency, the one the Galactic Council had sealed away centuries ago. The humans had been labeled too dangerous, too unpredictable. But the Krellos elders had studied human history, and they knew one thing above all. Humans never ignored a cry for help. The message went out, translated into the human language called English, to any human ships. This is Krellos colony, Helios Prime. Iron Maw attack imminent. We have no weapons. Children in danger. Please help. Then they waited. The Iron Maw ships settled into formation around the Krellos colony, their angular, black hulls cutting through the gas giant's atmosphere like knives. Inside the lead vessel, the Iron Maw commander, known only as Vexel, watched the colony through his viewscreen. His body was a patchwork of metal and flesh, cybernetic implants covering most of his frame. He had led the Iron Maw for decades, building an empire on the backs of the weak. Commander, his second-in-command, a hulking cyborg named Krellos, spoke through a voice modulator. The Krellos have not responded to our ultimatum. Vexel smiled, a grotesque twist of metal and muscle. They will. They always do. Begin preparations for atmospheric entry. I want their ammonia stores intact, and bring me the children first. Krellos nodded. As you command. Vexel turned back to the screen. He had heard the stories about humans, the so-called Deathworlders, but he had never encountered them. They had stayed in their corner of space, minding their own business. He wondered if they were as fearsome as the legends claimed. He didn't care. No one stood in the way of the Iron Maw. Captain Sinclair stood on the bridge of the Starfire Vanguard, watching as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Helios system. The tactical display showed the Iron Maw fleet surrounding the Krellos colony, their ships dark against the swirling colors of the gas giant. Status report, Sinclair ordered. 12 Iron Maw vessels, sir, Cole replied. They've begun deploying ground forces. The Krellos colony is broadcasting a continuous distress signal. Sinclair nodded. Atlas, what's our window? We have approximately 2 hours before the Iron Maw complete their assault, the AI said. If we engage now, we can intercept before they reach the colony's central spire. Then we engage now, Sinclair said. All ships, form up on the Vanguard. We're going in. The human fleet surged forward, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Sinclair watched as the Iron Maw ships began to react, their weapons powering up. Sir, Cole said, they're hailing us. On screen. The face of Vexel appeared, his cybernetic features twisted into a sneer. Human vessel, this is not your territory. Turn back now, or be destroyed. Sinclair met the cyborg's gaze without flinching. This is Captain Christopher Sinclair of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are ordered to cease your attack on Helios Prime and surrender immediately. Vexel laughed, a harsh mechanical sound. Surrender? To humans? You are nothing but primitives who survived a hellish world. You do not belong here. Sinclair's expression hardened. Then let me show you why we survived that world. He turned to his crew. All hands, battle stations. Let's remind these scavengers what happens when you threaten the innocent. On Helios Prime, Lyran watched as the human fleet entered the system. Her vapor body glowed with cautious hope. Jorvin stood beside her, his form flickering with nervous energy. Elder, he said. They're fighting. The humans are fighting for us. Lyran nodded, her colors shifting to a soft green. Yes, and now we must do our part. She turned to the colony's harmonic matrix, her tendrils moving over the controls. Activate the resonance shields. Seal all access points with harmonic barriers. We must protect the children at all costs. Jorvin moved to assist, his form steadying as he focused on the task. The Krellos had no weapons, but they had something else, their connection to the gas giant's atmosphere. They could manipulate the very air around them, creating barriers and disturbances that would hinder the Iron Maw's movements. As the first Iron Maw troops landed on the colony's outer platforms, the Krellos began to sing, a harmonic resonance that rippled through the atmosphere, creating pockets of turbulence that sent the invaders stumbling. Above the colony, the battle raged. The human fleet moved with precision, their ships weaving through the Iron Maw formation like dancers in a deadly ballet. Sinclair watched as the Vanguard took a direct hit, the ship shuddering under the impact. Damage report, he barked. Forward shields at 60%, Cole replied. No hull breaches. Weapons are still online. Sinclair nodded. Bring us around. Target their lead vessel. Atlas, activate the resonance disruptors. The Vanguard turned, its weapons glowing with energy. The resonance disruptors were a new technology, designed to vibrate at frequencies that disrupted enemy systems without causing massive destruction. They had been banned by the Galactic Council for being too dangerous, but Sinclair had fought to keep them in his arsenal. The disruptors fired, sending pulses of energy that struck the Iron Maw flagship. On the view screen, Sinclair watched as the enemy ship's systems flickered and failed. "Direct hit, sir," Cole reported. "Their weapons and engines are offline." Sinclair allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Now let's finish this." Vexel slammed his fist against the console as his ship lost power. "What the hell was that?" he snarled. Krellos stepped forward, his mechanical eyes scanning the damage reports. "Their weapons. They disrupted our systems without destroying us. It's like they knew exactly how to disable us." Vexel's cybernetic eye narrowed. "They're clever, but they're still just humans." He turned to the communications array. "All units, fall back to the flagship. We'll regroup and counterattack." But as he spoke, the human fleet began to close in, their ships forming a tight perimeter around the disabled Iron Maw vessels. On the colony, the Iron Maw troops struggled against the Krellos' harmonic defenses. The air itself seemed to fight them, swirling with unseen forces that knocked them off balance and disrupted their equipment. Yorvin stood at the colony's central spire, his vapor body glowing with concentration as he amplified the harmonic resonance. "Elder," he called to Laren, "they're retreating. The humans must be winning." Laren's form pulsed with relief. "Hold the resonance, child. We must not let them recover." As the Iron Maw forces stumbled back toward their landing craft, the Krellos intensified their song, creating a wall of sound that forced the invaders to their knees. Above the colony, Sinclair watched as the remaining Iron Maw ships powered down their weapons. The battle was over. The human fleet had taken minimal damage, while the Iron Maw fleet was in ruins. "Open a channel to the Iron Maw flagship," Sinclair ordered. Vexel's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. You humans, you had no right to interfere." Sinclair met his gaze steadily. "We had every right. You attacked a peaceful colony. You threatened innocent lives. That makes it our business." Vexel sneered. "You think this changes anything? The Iron Maw will return. We always do." "Not this time," Sinclair said. "You're under arrest. You and your entire fleet will stand trial for your crimes." Vexel laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Trial? By whom? The Galactic Council. They fear you as much as they fear us." Sinclair shook his head. "Not anymore." He turned to Cole. "Send the signal. It's time the galaxy saw what the Iron Maw has done." On Helios Prime, Laren watched as human drop ships descended toward the colony. She felt a moment of fear. What if they were no better than the Iron Maw? But it faded as the first human soldiers emerged, their faces visible behind transparent helmets. One of them, a woman with sharp features and kind eyes, approached Laren. She spoke slowly, as if trying to be understood. "I am Lieutenant Miranda Cole," she said. "We are here to help." Laren shifted her form to a soft blue, the Krellos color for gratitude. She reached out with a vapor tendril, and Cole gently touched it with her gloved hand. "Thank you," Laren said, her voice like a gentle breeze. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension. Representatives from 100 species filled the vast hall, their forms ranging from humanoid to amorphous energy fields. At the center of it all stood Captain Christopher Sinclair, his uniform crisp despite the long journey. Beside him stood Laren, her vapor body glowing with quiet strength. She had insisted on speaking for her people. "Counselors," Laren began, her voice translated into 100 languages. 3 weeks ago, my colony faced extinction. The Iron Maw came to take everything we had, to destroy us as they had destroyed so many others. We had no weapons, no defense. But we had had hope. She gestured to Sinclair. We called upon the humans, the species you labeled too dangerous to trust, and they came. Not for glory, not for power, but because it was the right thing to do. The chamber fell silent as footage from the battle played on the main display. Human ships moving with precision, protecting the Krellos colony, capturing the Iron Maw without unnecessary destruction. Sinclair stepped forward. For too long, the Galactic Council has hidden behind treaties that do nothing to protect the innocent. We stayed in our assigned sector, respecting your wishes. But when someone called for help, we answered, because that's what we do. A tall insectoid counselor rose from his seat. Your actions were heroic, Captain, but they violated the Accord. You cannot simply ignore the law. Sinclair met his gaze. On Earth, we have an old saying, the law is not a shield for the wicked, but a sword for the just. We followed a higher law, the law that says no one should stand by while the innocent suffer. Liren activated a new display, showing the Iron Maw's records of atrocities. The Iron Maw has attacked 32 colonies in the past year. They chose their targets carefully, peaceful species who could not defend themselves. They assumed no one would come to help. But someone did come. She turned to the counselor. Why should we fear the human strength when we have seen what happens without it? The chamber erupted in discussion. Sinclair watched as representatives from dozens of species whispered among themselves, their expressions thoughtful. Finally, the counselor who had spoken earlier rose again. Captain Sinclair, Elder Liren, the council has reached a decision. The old treaties are revised. From this day forward, human ships may respond to any distress call within the galaxy, and any colony that requests human protection will receive it. A murmur of approval ran through the chamber. Sinclair felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This was what he had fought for. Not power, not conquest, but the chance to protect those who needed it. As they left the chamber, Liren turned to Sinclair. You know, she said, her form glowing with a warm gold, we used to call humans the Death Worlders, but perhaps we should call you what you truly are. Sinclair smiled. And what's that? Guardians, Liren said. The guardians we always needed. Captain Sinclair stood on the observation deck of the Starfire Vanguard, watching as the fleet prepared to depart. Below them, the Krellos colony glowed like a jewel in the gas giant's atmosphere. The repairs were nearly complete, and the colony would soon be thriving again. Lieutenant Cole joined him at the railing. Sir, the Krellos have requested something. Sinclair raised an eyebrow. What is it? They want to establish a permanent human presence in their system. They say they never want to feel that helpless again. Sinclair nodded. Tell them we'll be back. We always are. He turned to look at the stars beyond the nebula. For so long, humanity had been feared and isolated. But today, they had shown the galaxy what true strength meant. Not the power to destroy, but the will to protect. Atlas, he said, plot a course for the next sector. I have a feeling we'll be needed again soon. The AI's hologram appeared beside him. Aye, Captain, and welcome home. As the Starfire Vanguard surged forward, Sinclair knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same. And neither would they. In the months that followed, the human fleet became a symbol of hope across the galaxy. Dozens of colonies requested their protection, and the humans answered every call. The Iron Maw, once the terror of the outer systems, was broken. Their leaders stood trial, their crimes exposed for all to see. Captain Sinclair became a legend, but he never sought glory. He knew the truth. Humanity's strength had never been in its weapons or its ships. It had always been in the choice to stand up for those who could not stand for themselves. On Helios Prime, the Krellos built a monument in the center of their colony, a swirling sculpture of light and sound that echoed the harmonic resonance they had used to defend their home. At its base, inscribed in 100 languages, was a single phrase. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And high above, the Starfire Vanguard watched over them, a silent guardian in the endless sea of stars. The first time Jorvin met a human child, he was surprised by how fragile they seemed. The boy, named Tommy, was small for his age with bright eyes and a smile that reminded Jorvin of the sun breaking through storm clouds. They met in the colony's central garden, a place where Krellos and humans had begun to share knowledge and culture. Tommy's father was one of the human engineers helping to rebuild the colony's harmonic matrix. "Can you really float?" Tommy asked, his voice full of wonder. Jorvin shifted his vapor body into a playful spiral. "Yes. Would you like to see?" Tommy nodded eagerly, and Jorvin rose into the air, his form shifting through a spectrum of colors. The boy laughed, reaching up as if he could touch the swirling colors. Later, as the sun set over the gas giant, Tommy's father joined them. His name was Dr. Randy Brooks, and he had lost his wife to an Iron Maw raid years ago. "Thank you," he said to Jorvin, "for letting us be here." Jorvin's form glowed with understanding. "No, thank you, for showing us that strength can be kind." Captain Sinclair visited Helios Prime often in the months that followed. Each time, he saw more evidence of the bond forming between humans and Krellos. They shared stories, technology, and dreams for the future. One evening, as he walked through the colony's central spire, he found Liren waiting for him. "Captain," she said, her voice like a gentle breeze, "I have something to show you." She led him to a new chamber, where a massive harmonic matrix pulsed with soft light. "We've been working on this," she explained. "It's a fusion of Krellos and human technology. It can amplify our harmonic resonance across vast distances." Sinclair studied the device, impressed. "What's it for?" Liren's form glowed with purpose. "To call for help, not just for us, but for anyone in need. We want to spread the signal across the galaxy so no one has to face the darkness alone." Sinclair felt a lump in his throat. "That's brilliant." Liren shifted closer. "It's your idea, Captain. You taught us that strength is not just in fighting but in reaching out." Sinclair shook his head. "No, this is all you." The Iron Maw trials were held in the heart of the galaxy, a massive space station that served as the Galactic Council's judicial center. Sinclair attended as a witness, watching as the evidence against Vexel and his commanders was presented. The footage was harrowing. Colonies stripped bare, inhabitants harvested like crops, and children taken from their parents. But the most damning evidence came from the Iron Maw's own records, logs of their attacks, kept as trophies. When Vexel took the stand, he showed no remorse. "We did what was necessary," he said, his cybernetic eyes scanning the room. "The weak exist to be taken. That is the law of the universe." Sinclair stood to testify. "Then the universe is wrong," he said, his voice steady. "Strength is not about taking. It's about protecting. And today, we show the galaxy what true strength looks like." The verdict was swift. Life imprisonment for Vexel and his commanders, with no possibility of parole. As they were led away, Vexel turned to Sinclair one last time. "You think this changes anything?" he sneered. "There will always be those who take, and those who are taken." Sinclair met his gaze. "Not if we have anything to say about it." Back on Helios Prime, the harmonic beacon was ready. On the day of its activation, representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness the event. Liren stood at the controls, her form glowing with anticipation. Sinclair stood beside her, watching as she initiated the sequence. The beacon pulsed, sending harmonic resonance across the galaxy, a signal that could be heard by any species with the means to listen. It carried a simple message: you are not alone. As the signal spread, Sinclair felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. This was what they had fought for. Not conquest, not power, but connection. Years passed, and the galaxy changed. The human fleet became known as the Guardians, their ships a symbol of hope rather than fear. Colonies that had once lived in terror now thrived under their protection. Captain Sinclair retired from active duty, but he never stopped watching over the galaxy. He traveled from colony to colony, sharing stories of the early days, and reminding everyone why they fought. On his last visit to Helios Prime, he found Jorvin waiting for him. The young Krellos had grown into a respected leader, his form glowing with the wisdom of experience. "Captain," Jorvin said, "we have something for you." He led Sinclair to a new chamber, where a massive sculpture stood, a fusion of human and Krellos artistry. It depicted a human hand reaching out to a swirling vapor form, their connection creating a burst of light that filled the room. "It's for you," Jorvin said. "A reminder that strength is not in the hand that fights, but in the hand that reaches out." Sinclair felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. As he left Helios Prime for the last time, Sinclair knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would always need guardians. And as long as there were humans willing to stand up for the innocent, the light would never go out. In the end, it wasn't about being feared. It wasn't about being the strongest or the most powerful. It was about being there when it mattered. It was about answering the call, no matter the cost. And as the Starfire Vanguard disappeared into the stars, carrying the hope of 1,000 colonies, Captain Christopher Sinclair knew they had finally found their place in the galaxy. Not as monsters, not as conquerors, but as guardians, the protectors the galaxy had always needed.